So, in this video, we are going to have a look at the insane backstories of all the VILTRUMITEs that we have already seen and the VILTRUMITEs that we will soon be seeing in this series. So without wasting any time, let's get started with Marky aka Kid Invincible. So, Marky, or Kid Invincible's story starts with Anessa, who was also tasked with creating children by mating on Earth in order to increase the VILTRUMITE population. Soon it is revealed that Omni-Man is the son of their former emperor and Invincible is the grandson of their former emperor Argall. So, Anessa thinks of a plan. She initially spies on Invincible, and then once she anonymously helps in the Guardians of the Globe's battle against Dr. Seismic, she flew through a magmamite monster summoned by Dr. Seismic, similar to what she did when she arrived on Earth for the first time. Mark, shocked at this, flew up to sky level to find out who did it. There, she revealed that she had slain the beast. Mark asks what her motives were, citing that he saw her watching him and his father. She rebuffed him and said that she was only watching Mark, not Nolan. She kissed him, much to Mark's surprise and dismay, and then she flew off, hoping to see him again. Later, after Mark returns from the alternate dimension where he was trapped by Robot, Anessa would find Mark and see him for the first time in 6 months. She asked him where he had been. Before Mark could speak and finish his statement, she stopped him by telling him about the VILTRUMITE mission of procreating with humans and how she wasn't performing on her end. Mark attempts to leave as he was looking for Robot, but Anessa stops him. She began to tell him about her refusal to mate with humans. She told him that even though he was young and weak, she'd settle on mating with him because of his VILTRUMITE heritage. Mark refused her and flew off, citing that he is still with Eve. But Anessa attacks him to stop his flight. Mark asks her to leave him alone, saying that he doesn't want to fight. She retorted that she didn't want to fight either, but she couldn't stall the mission, citing that Nolan may not be as forceful as Thragg, but the mission to procreate still remained active. She attempts to seduce Mark, but he refuses her. She loses her patience and headbutted Mark. Seeing that seducing him won't work, Anessa realizes now that she must force herself onto Mark. Mark asks her to leave him be, but she refuses and charges. Mark lightly fought her off, hoping that she would leave him alone. However, Anessa wasn't swayed, but much rather she was enjoying the battle. She caught Mark's punch, noticing that he was stronger than before. Then she used her superior strength to overpower him, and the duo crashed on an unknown farm while she laid on top of Mark. She pushed back his arms and demanded that he stop resisting her. Mark refuses to give up and emphasizes his refusal. She continues her assault with her elbow at his neck. Anessa reaches for Mark's genitals, with Mark still attempting to push her off. She tore off their costumes and proceeded to get intimate with him forcefully. While Mark watches in horror, Anessa is aroused. Traumatized after this experience, Mark begins to cry. Anessa tells him to man up and says that it will probably take few more attempts to get pregnant, implying that she will be back to try again. She then flies off, leaving a traumatized Mark to reflect on his situation. Mark was traumatized by this experience, but he never thought about the results of everything that happened that day. So, Anessa had successfully gotten pregnant, and she didn't tell anyone about the father of her soon-to-be-born child. Then a couple of months after Mark had left Earth, Anessa gave birth to Mark's son, Marky. So while Mark was not on Earth, Anessa married a human named Scott, and Marky used to think that Scott was his actual father. Marky always took care of his younger sister and always waited for his mother to return from her missions. When his mother left to fight Grand Regent Thragg and his army of Thraxan VILTRUMITE hybrids, Marky and his sister were kidnapped by Robot. Marky tried to resist, but his efforts were completely worthless in front of Robot. Later, when Marky and other VILTRUMITE children were rescued, he found out that his mother is dead. He then met Invincible and asked him if his mother was really dead. After he returned home with his father, he broke down and couldn't understand what happened to his mother. He destroyed all his toys and locked himself in his room. Scott told him that he also missed Anessa and tried to talk to him. Suddenly, because of his grief, Marky's VILTRUMITE powers kicked in and he flew away while also destroying a portion of his house. He had no control over his powers, so he accidentally flew into the city and destroyed a lot of property. Immortal found out about this and called Invincible, who is now the emperor of the new VILTRUMITE empire. So police officers came and told Marky to surrender, but Marky was already scared and couldn't understand how to stop his powers, and he unintentionally kept destroying more and more things around him. The police officers started shooting at him, but because of his VILTRUMITE powers, the bullets were practically useless in front of him. Just then, Invincible and Eve also arrive on the scene. Eve stops the bullets by creating a barrier, and Invincible takes Marky and flies him into the upper atmosphere. Marky doesn't know who Invincible is, and so he starts resisting and tells Invincible to let go of him. He continues to resist, and in order to calm him, Invincible tells him that he is his real father. Hearing this, Marky was shocked, and in a matter of seconds, he lost consciousness. Moving on, we have Mohawk Mark, who is one of the multiversal variants of Invincible. So, in his dimension, Mohawk Mark and Atom Eve had grown close after Rex cheated on her with Kate. However, there was something off about Mohawk Mark, like he was just not entirely human, which he isn't, but you get what that means. He didn't see things the same way others did. There were little things, but the team members mostly ignored them. What happened was, Mohawk Mark realized how different he was from the people of his planet, and how stupid it was for him to waste any time protecting them and fighting them without getting anything in return. He realized that the people of Earth could be worshipping him. Then, Omni-Man enlisted him, and Mohawk Mark actually thought the team would help him take over the planet. Eve actually considered it, but after he killed Rex, whom she was no longer in love with but very close with, she fought him. Mohawk Mark then killed her, along with all the remaining members of the team and Guardians of the Globe. Next, Mohawk Mark went to the Mauler twins of his dimension and tore off the head of the one without the nose ring before he could talk. Mohawk Mark also destroyed the remaining Mauler's cloning equipment. Finally, a chain of events transpired in which Omni-Man, Thaedus, and Fula were killed, and Mohawk Mark was appointed Emperor of the VILTRUMITES. Thragg was cast out, and he led a rebellion against Mohawk Mark. Because he was not a superhero in this dimension, he did not kill Conquest. They took over Earth and set up their high-tech power center citadel in the Pentagon, and General Kregg was appointed to oversee the Science Commission with Earth scientists, who they likely enslaved. Conquest was the main sentry for the planet, and Anessa and Lucan were assigned other lead roles. A long time passed just like this. The VILTRUMITE forces hounded the remaining Mauler at every turn and prevented him from cloning himself again. The remaining Mauler was not able to rebuild his equipment or find a place to be alone with his work. However, when he saw the governments of the world overthrown and saw one power trying to manage the planet and not working, he saw the error of their ways and wanted to stop them and restore order. Also, Monster Girl never met Robot, who never found a cure for her reverse aging, so she digressed into an infant and became an even stronger and larger but more sleepy monster when she transformed. Most of Earth's citizens who still lived knew it as the monster, and the VILTRUMITES captured it. Whenever the VILTRUMITES unleashed the beast, it was difficult even for them to contain. Soon, Angstrom Levy would arrive in Mohawk Mark's dimension and offered him assistance in expanding his empire to other dimensions if he helped him first. So, Mohawk Mark accepted his offer and took place in the Invincible War. Moving on, we have another multiversal variant of Invincible, who is very famously called Sinister Mark. So little is known about Sinister Mark's past, but it's implied that most of his life had been similar to the mainstream Marks, with the exception that something had made him closer to his father, leading him to a darker path that culminated in him joining the ranks of the Viltrum Empire. According to him, his world's version of Firebreather is the king of all monsters, and one of the most ferocious villains he had ever faced during his time as a superhero, which could lead to the hypothesis that everyone is a little more evil in Sinister Mark's dimension. It's also mentioned by the Masked Mark that, sometime after becoming a villain, Sinister Mark murdered his own mother in their own home, which made him hate coming back to that place. Sinister Mark was approached by the mainstream Angstrom Levy to aid him ruin his home dimension's invincible reputation, and, in exchange, Levy would help his empire expand across universes. He accepted the offer and was among the wave of Marks that stormed the mainstream universe. After him, we have Conquest. So, Conquest's role is apparently to fly to troublesome planets in order to quell resistance to VILTRUMITE rule. he was on one such mission against the Ragnars when he exhibited the secondary effects of the Scourge virus, and the once seemingly indestructible VILTRUMITE was badly maimed in battle against the savage beasts and barely escaped with his life, as his right arm was ripped off, his face permanently scarred, and he was blinded in his right eye. An indeterminate amount of time passed between his maiming at the hands of the Ragnars and his summons to Earth. When he arrived on Earth, he was stunned to see that the planet's defenses were still in place, despite it being in shambles as a result of the Invincible War. Upon his arrival, he found the VILTRUMITE's assigned designate, Mark Grayson, aiding the humans with its rebuilding. With disgust and visible annoyance, Conquest gave Invincible a single chance to explain his actions. When he was rebuked, Conquest immediately launched into a vicious assault on the young VILTRUMITE. Conquest immediately proved not only to Invincible, but to the rest of the planet exactly how powerful and motivated he truly is. The two VILTRUMITEs streaked across the planet. They left countless dollars of destruction and an undetermined number of corpses across the planet as they pitted their titanic strength against one another. Moving on, we have Thragg. So, the future Grand Regent of the VILTRUMITE race was the son of one of Emperor Argall's closest advisors. Like all VILTRUMITE infants, he was conceived through a process of eugenics and selective breeding. From the moment he was born, Thragg was subjected to a grueling training regime. Its sole purpose was to maximize his raw physical power and to create the most capable and dangerous tactical mind amongst their kind. It was a success, and at its completion, Thragg possessed a level of strength and ruthlessness that outstripped every other VILTRUMITE in existence. Presumably, upon reaching maturity, Thragg served as a member of the VILTRUMITE World Conquering Committee and was a loyal member of the VILTRUMITE Empire. He was exceptionally loyal to the VILTRUMITE Grand Regent Lord Argall and served him loyally up until the moment of his murder. After Argall was killed by Thaedus, Thragg fought in the VILTRUMITE Civil War to restore order to the Empire, meaning Thragg is thousands of years old. After the battle, the VILTRUMITEs would emerge as an unbeatable race led by him. Thragg would be granted the title of Grand Regent, tasked with finding the heir of Argall. He would keep Argall's skull as a reminder of what would happen were the Empire to fall into disarray. Soon, the Scourge virus was created, and the planet's population was severely depleted, which would make him believe that the heir had died. Afterward, he would cease all attempts to find the heir, feeling that he had earned his place among them. Despite his awesome physical power, Thragg manipulated events from the sidelines and rarely intervened physically. The key to his plan was to maintain the illusion of strength while searching for a method to bolster the VILTRUMITE's depleted numbers. This all changed with the discovery of Earth and Nolan's defection to the coalition of planets. Thragg realized that with Nolan's defection, the days of operating from the shadows had ended. He immediately went on the offensive, gathering his scattered troops. He prepared to launch a full-scale attack on the planet Taliskria, the center of the coalition's power. After him, we have Oliver Grayson. So, the planet Thraxa was first discovered by the Nolan. He found it a few weeks after abandoning his post on the planet Earth. Upon his arrival, he discovered that it was inhabited by a native race of aliens who called themselves Thraxans. The Thraxans were a mantis-like people that possessed a rare genetic quirk. They aged from birth to maturity to death within 9 months. Their hierarchy was based on age, and the eldest being on the planet ruled over all. Upon his arrival, Nolan Grayson was quickly made ruler of their world. After a period of adjustment, he took a native Thraxan named Anessa as his wife, and their union produced a son who would eventually be named Oliver. Later, Nolan was taken into custody, while Mark was left battered and unconscious in the ruins of Thraxa. With their goal accomplished, the VILTRUMITEs quickly lost interest in Thraxa and left its devastated people to their own devices. In Nolan's absence, Anessa assumed sole control of the Thraxan people. She oversaw the rebuilding of their society in the wake of the VILTRUMITE rampage. With her guidance and Mark's raw power, they managed to rebuild enough of their infrastructure to allow Invincible to leave within a few months. During that time, Mark grew closer to his younger brother. When Anessa begged him to bring Oliver back to his homeworld, he easily agreed. It was plain to see that despite the rapid rate Oliver was aging, his VILTRUMITE DNA would cause him to outlive everyone who cared about him on Thraxa, and he would end up alone on that planet. Upon their arrival, Mark took Oliver to the one place he knew he would receive the care he needed. He took him to the home of his mother, Debbie Grayson. She was shocked and hurt by the news that her estranged husband had started a new family. She initially could not believe the audacity of her son's request that she care for his child, but when Mark was called away by an emergency, she quickly bonded with the child and decided to raise him as her own. She even went so far as to actually name him, as up until this point Oliver had gone nameless due to the Thraxan custom of allowing individuals to choose their own names upon maturity. In a few short months, Oliver had matured in appearance and intellect, becoming physically a preteen with a firm grasp of the English language. Even more shockingly, Oliver began to manifest his VILTRUMITE legacy at a far younger age than his brother did. Oliver's burgeoning abilities easily eclipsed those of his Homo sapien counterparts and allowed him great success despite his inexperience. However, his emotional growth had failed to keep pace with his physical growth. It didn't take long for Oliver to adopt his own costume, and he began to battle the Earth's criminal element after naming himself Kid Omni-Man. Moving on, we have Thaedus. So Thaedus was born on Viltrum. Seeing that the Viltrumites' planet conquering was tyrannical and evil, Thaedus chose to betray his race and became the first of his race to rebel against the Empire. He would slay the Emperor Argall of the Viltrum Empire and defect to parts unknown, sending the Empire into disarray. He later established the coalition of planets to defend the universe against the Viltrumite threat and battled them for thousands of years. Thaedus then decided he would use his own DNA as a catalyst for a virus that would cause the mass genocide of the Viltrumites, though not known to him. After leaving Viltrum, Thaedus found members of other alien races and got them to join the coalition of planets. He allowed, out of desperation, a breeding program by a Unipan leader that would make Unipans stronger than Viltrumites. The subjects failed until Alan the alien was born. Alan was strong, but not stronger than a Viltrumite. After Alan had fought and lost against the Viltrumites, Thaedus decided to shut down the program. Years later, Thaedus was attending a council meeting with the Geladarian leader recently inducted. Alan reported Invincible, a human/Viltrumite hybrid, was sympathetic to their cause. Thanking him for the information, he relieved Alan and continued the meeting. Later, Thaedus went to see Alan after he was brought to the brink of death. He told Alan that there was a spy in the Coalition Council. While Alan was recovering from his injuries, Thaedus had been observing him and realized how much stronger he was becoming. Months later, he would see Alan greater than ever and tell him of his progress. He would go on to say that his strength was near or at Viltrumite levels. Alan asked him how he knew how strong a Viltrumite is. Thaedus then asked Alan's nurse to leave him, and there he revealed that he knew because he is a Viltrumite himself. Moving on, we have Terra Grayson. So Terra Grayson was born to Samantha Eve Wilkins, a human with transmutation powers, and Mark Grayson, a human and Viltrumite hybrid. When Atom Eve got pregnant with Mark, it was a turbulent time. They had immense relationship issues. To make it worse, Mark was assaulted by Anessa. That depression widened the emotional gulf. Eve wanted to make things work but needed a more mature Mark as a husband and soulmate. But sadly, chaos ensued when Robot activated his drones to purge Earth. He wanted all the superheroes dead or under his thumb. Rudy didn't want the Viltrumites on Earth seeking redemption either. He knew the more they bred and created hybrids, the higher the chance of them taking over. As the culling ensued, a drone attacked Eve. It cut her leg off, leaving her barely clinging to life. Mark got her to Nolan's base in space, where she was saved. And Terra was born there, a child of war. Mark wanted to kill Robot. However, Nolan arranged a truce to take some of the Viltrumites off planet. Mark felt that the sadistic Robot won. However, as sickened as he was by this betrayal, he had his daughter, and he wanted to keep her safe at any cost. After Eve's recovery, they go back to Eve's house with Terra. She would breastfeed Terra while they had dinner, much to her grandfather's disgust. She would put Terra to bed while they attended the funerals of Black Samson, Knockout, and Kid 4, and Cecil Stedman. After this, Mark and Eve decided to leave Earth and move to a different planet for their family's safety. They both say their goodbyes to their families and set off into space, where they choose to name their child Terra, calling her their little piece of Earth. Moving on, we have Lord Argall of VILTRUMITE. So, Argall was born into the powerful VILTRUMITE dynasty. It is implied that the dynasty's bloodline was so pure that they were even more invulnerable and powerful than the average VILTRUMITE, although they were also of average strength for their species. Argall's life is somewhat contradictory throughout the series. Some who tell the history of the Empire describe him as a benevolent monarch whose rule predated the VILTRUMITE's conquest of the galaxy. Others claim that he was a cruel tyrant who sent out his armies to conquer other worlds. Regardless, it was clear that he was a wise ruler, and that the VILTRUMITES followed him for his wisdom rather than his strength. However, he was eventually assassinated by Thaedus, a VILTRUMITE who realized the evil ways of their people. After his death, a period of unrest followed in which the VILTRUMITES killed off half their population to remove the weak, and also destroyed most of their planet's infrastructure in the process. During this time, his heirs were lost. Another VILTRUMITE named Thragg, who had been bred and trained to be the strongest of their kind, was made regent until a true heir could be found. After him, we have Nolan, aka Omni-Man. So, Nolan Grayson was an alien VILTRUMITE born on their planet Viltrum. His father, Emperor Argall, was the VILTRUMITE's leader. When he was very young, his father was killed by a turncoat who no longer believed in the VILTRUMITE's violent ways. Nolan was too young to remember anything about his father. His true heritage was hidden from records in order to hide him from VILTRUMITE enemies. The VILTRUMITES were then organized into the Viltrum Empire, led by Thragg. In his youth, Nolan signed up to conquer planets for the Empire, and he was so successful that he went on to command his own unit. Since a virus depleted the VILTRUMITE population down to less than 50, the Empire decided on a different strategy. Taking advantage of their long lifespans, they decided they should infiltrate a society first and weaken the chance of it resisting takeover. Nolan took on this mission and flew to the planet Earth to accomplish his task. Next, we have Anessa. So, in every way that counts, Anessa is a VILTRUMITE to the core. Her desires in life are influenced by three main concepts: utter loyalty to the VILTRUMITE Empire, physical strength above all else, and glory in battle. These three concepts are all that truly matters to her. She was first sent to the planet Earth in order to verify if Invincible was making progress in weakening the planet's defenses. When she arrived, she was disappointed to find that Invincible had literally taken no action towards completing his assigned task. Anessa sought out Invincible in his civilian identity and found him on his university campus with his mother. She coerced him into following her into the afternoon sky by threatening his mother's life, but when he arrived expecting a fight, she surprised him with an offer to talk. The two parleyed briefly, and Anessa explained how the coming VILTRUMITE invasion would be a good thing for the Earth and its inhabitants. She expounded on the virtues of their arrival and how it would eliminate sickness, greed, and want amongst the people of Earth. When Invincible countered that its people would be treated as pets, Anessa didn't deny his assertion. Moving on, we have Ursaal. So, being one of the many children of Thragg that he created by breeding with many Thraxan females, Ursaal is a daughter of Grand Regent Thragg and an unknown Thraxan female. One of many of his children, but one who has shown a pragmatic sense of duty in battle. She attempted to stop one of her many siblings who was torturing and massacring members of a planet they had just conquered, specifying the need for their loyalty to the VILTRUMITE Empire. Her pragmatism may come from her Thraxan genetics, which have shown to be a species that adapts and learns quickly. Later, she is sent along with her brother to kill the young Grayson's family. Next, we have General Kregg. So, General Kregg is a fairly typical member of the VILTRUMITE race. Outwardly, he appears to be a human Caucasian male in every way. He is a tall, rugged-looking man with jet black hair and a thick moustache that sits prominently above his lip. His entire body is covered with muscle, most prominently on his upper torso, which is built like one of the world's best bodybuilders. Kregg's hair is usually kept close-cropped and has a noticeable widow's peak. As a result of the period of vulnerability that he experienced while infected with the Scourge virus, Kregg has lost his right eye. He has had it replaced with a prosthetic eye, which is circular in nature with a bright red lens. He disguises the prosthetic with a simple black eye patch when he walks amongst the human population of the Earth. Kregg's Viltrumite attire is typical for an average Viltrumite soldier. It is a form-fitting white body stocking with grey accents. A large semicircular swath of grey surrounds the neck of his uniform, and a thin strip of grey runs down the centre of its chest. Sometime during his life, he would assume a high-rank position in the Viltrum Empire. Kregg first appeared at the conclusion of the skirmish that took place on the planet Thraxa between the Grayson family and the Viltrumite operatives who had been sent to retrieve them. Upon his arrival, Kregg surveyed the destruction their conflict had caused and was pleasantly surprised by the raw strength that Omni-Man's son had shown during the battle. In addition to allowing Invincible to live, Kregg granted him the title of Viltrumite Agent of Earth. Kregg further gave him a time limit to conquer the planet. He then left with the then helpless Omni-Man in chains and took him to a heavy security Viltrumite prison to recover from his wounds. Kregg returned to the prison several months later in order to ascertain if Omni-Man had recovered enough to stand trial for his treason. When he saw that Nolan had recovered his strength, Kregg scheduled his execution and left. He then waited near Earth, in space, while the Viltrumite Anessa attempted to persuade Invincible to proceed with the subjugation of the Earth's populace. After him, we have Fula. So, many eons ago, during the Argall era, Fula was born on the planet Viltrum. From a very young age, like many Viltrumite veterans, she held great adoration towards her sovereign's wisdom. After Emperor Argall's death, she engaged in a bloody survival of the fittest called the Great Purge along with the rest of her race, and was one of many to survive the Civil War. Not long afterwards, she joined the survivors in their universal expansion goals. After performing well in countless missions, she became recognized and was officially made one of General Kregg's most trusted subordinates. Like many of her kind, Fula harbored a feeling of great respect towards the Great Nolan, as Nolan had become one of the greatest and most successful Viltrumites to ever live. Hundreds of years later, upon learning from their mole inside the coalition of planets that Nolan abandoned his post on Earth and that he sired a hybrid heir, Fula, along with Vidor and Lucan, traveled to Taliskria, where they tracked down the Unipan Coalition soldier Alan to a restaurant spaceship orbiting the planet. The three attempted to extract more information regarding Nolan from him, but instead, Alan vexingly refused, resulting in his nigh-fatal beatdown and hospitalization. She, along with Lucan and Vidor, finally learned of Nolan's whereabouts and traveled to Thraxa, decimating the planet. Then, in the ensuing battle, all the participants were greatly injured, including Fula. However, she survived and was taken back to planet Viltrum, where she recovered. So, yeah, that's all for this video, and thanks for watching.